thought about how something as, well, as basic as a population count can just explode into a massive legal and political firestorm?
It seems so bureaucratic, right?
Totally, just counting people. But that's exactly the drama we're diving into today, the showdown over the Bihar Caste survey, which is right now under the microscope in India's Supreme Court.
A huge, huge case.
So for you, our mission today is to break this whole thing down layer by layer. We're going to start with the why. Why did Bihar even do this in the first place?
What was the justification?
Exactly. Then we'll look at the results because, wow, they were explosive. And finally, we'll navigate the legal battle that followed, but without the jargon. We want to get to the core constitutional questions.
And that constitutional part is, I mean, that's everything here. This isn't just about numbers in a spreadsheet.
No.
What's really at stake is the balance of power in India's federal system. The core question is, can a state government collect this kind of detailed social data? Or is that something only the central government can do?
It's a classic center versus state fight.
It really is. Played out through demographics.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start right at the beginning. What was Bihar actually trying to do when Chief Minister Nitish Kumar kicked this whole thing off back in 2022?
The stated goal, I mean, it was pretty clear.
Yeah, the government's rationale was refreshingly straightforward. They wanted to launch this huge survey to get current data on castes, subcastes, and this is the crucial part, the socioeconomic conditions of those groups.
Because they were flying blind, essentially.
Exactly. They were using data that was decades old. The whole point was to make sure welfare programs, job reservations, education benefits, all of it was actually reaching the people who need it most.
So they felt like they were trying to navigate a modern city with, like, a hand-drawn map from 50 years ago.
Perfect analogy. They needed a satellite view, and they needed it now.
And that urgency really drove the timeline. The survey started in 2022, and they wrapped up the second really intensive phase by August 2023.
That's incredibly fast for a project of this scale.
It is. But the real explosion happened when they made the results public in October 2023. That's when the whole country really started paying attention.
And those results, I mean, they really did change the entire conversation. The numbers themselves became politically explosive.
Oh, absolutely.
The data showed that the other backward classes, the OBCs, and the extremely backward classes, the EBCs, together they make up a massive majority.
Over 63% of the state's population.
63%. Just let that number sink in. That figure alone is a political earthquake.
It is, because policy had been based on much older, much lower estimates. So when you suddenly have hard data showing that nearly two-thirds of your state falls into these categories, the pressure to act is immense.
And they did act.
Immediately. The Bihar government moved to raise the reservation quota from 50% up to 65% in state jobs and education. It shows this wasn't just an academic exercise. This data was fuel for immediate policy change.
That's the key takeaway. And beyond the OBC and EBC numbers, the survey also found that scheduled castes, the SCs, were at 19%.
And scheduled tribes, FTs, were about 1.7%.
So when you add all those groups together,
Yeah.
the sheer number of people with fresh official data backing up their status just completely rewrites the script on affirmative action and how resources get divided.
And this ties right into this, the decades-long push for social justice in India. You can't fix what you can't measure.
Right.
So this kind of data, this granular data, lets policymakers move past assumptions and actually target help where it's statistically, and I'd argue ethically, needed. It's about using knowledge to try and build a fairer system.
Okay, but here's where it gets really, really interesting. Because that political push for fairness ran headfirst into a legal wall.
A very solid one.
Let's talk about the challengers. You had the NGO, Youth for Equality, and individuals like Akhilesh Kumar. And their argument wasn't about welfare. It was about something much more fundamental.
It was about who gets to count. Who has the constitutional right to categorize the population in the first place?
So what was their core legal argument?
It's actually very technical, but it comes down to the division of powers. They claim Bihar was completely overstepping its authority.
How so?
You see, the Indian Constitution puts the power to conduct a census exclusively with the Union, the central government. It's right there in the rulebook. Their whole argument hinged on the Census Act of 1948.
The law that gives the central government sole authority.
Exactly. So from their point of view, what Bihar did was just a census by another name. They saw it as an illegal encroachment on the central government's turf.
That's a very strong constitutional claim. But they didn't stop there, did they? They also raised other concerns.
No, and that was a very smart legal strategy. They layered their arguments.
What were the other points?
They brought up civil liberties. First, a potential invasion of privacy. I mean, we're talking about collecting very sensitive data, caste, financial status on a massive scale.
And the second point?
The second was that by focusing so heavily on caste, the survey could actually make social divisions worse, that it might stir up friction instead of fixing inequality.
So these powerful arguments land first in the Patna High Court. But the High Court didn't buy it.
No, in August 2023, they gave the survey the green light. The court said it was completely legal.
What was their reasoning?
Their rationale was that Bihar's intent was what mattered. The state wasn't trying to conduct an official census, which is the union's job. It was just gathering data for a very specific purpose.
For welfare and development planning.
Exactly. The court found that goal-promoting equality was a justifiable reason for the data collection. But, that ruling was really just the opening act for the main event.
The Supreme Court showdown.
The definitive one.
Right. So after the High Court ruling, the challengers immediately took it to the top. And the Supreme Court's involvement here has been, well, it's been a slow burn drama, hasn't it? They seemed really reluctant to jump in at first.
Very reluctant. And that comes from a kind of judicial philosophy. The Supreme Court usually prefers to let the high courts handle these state-level issues first. Let the legal arguments get fully hashed out down below.
They want to avoid what they call a political thicket.
Exactly. Especially when it's a state policy with a clear development goal. They don't want to step in prematurely.
And we saw that play out in the timeline.
We did.
Back in January 2023, a bench led by Justice Gavai and Justice Neth basically told the petitioners to go back to the High Court first.
Right. Use the proper channels.
Then again, in May 2023, a different bench did the same thing, choosing not to interfere while the High Court was still looking at it. It was a clear pattern of judicial patience.
But the real pivot point came in August 2023. And this was after the survey work was already finished.
This is when Justices Sanjeev Khanna and SVN Body refused to stop the publication of the data.
And their reasoning was so pragmatic, they basically said, look, it's too late. The work is done.
You can't unring the bell.
Exactly. To stop it then would have been a colossal waste of public money and effort that had already been spent.
And they added a specific comment that I think is really telling. They called some of the pleas publicity interest litigation. That's a pretty sharp rebuke from the highest court.
It's a very strong term. It suggests the court felt that some of the challengers might be motivated by more than just pure legal principle.
Maybe seeking attention or political points.
Right. It was the court signaling that they're skeptical of every single appeal, especially when the main work is already in the can. It felt like they were defending the state's completed work.
Okay, so that brings us right up to now. The immediate future. The Supreme Court has scheduled a fresh hearing for January 14th. This feels like the real deal.
This is it. This is where they finally have to dig into that core constitutional question we talked about at the start.
Can states like Bihar run their own caste surveys, or is that exclusively a job for the central government under that 1948 Act?
And to really get the weight of that question, you have to look at the national picture. The backdrop to all of this is the failure of the 2011 socioeconomic and caste census.
The SECC, the one the central government conducted but never fully released the caste data from.
Exactly. For over a decade, that data has been locked away.
Why? Why did they just sit on it?
The official line was that the data was just too flawed, full of errors, inconsistencies. Basically that it was too unreliable to be used for policy.
So it just became too politically hot to handle.
It did. And the result is this huge decade-long data vacuum at the national level. So Bihar's move, whatever you think of the legality, is essentially them saying,
if you won't give us the data to govern our state, we'll get it ourselves.
That's it in a nutshell. It's a direct response to federal inaction.
And that framing leads to two very, very different potential outcomes from this January 14th hearing. The stakes are incredibly high.
Immense.
So, outcome A. The court sides with the challengers. It rules that this survey was an overreach.
If that happens, it could stop similar efforts dead in their tracks. We know other states like Uttar Pradesh and Karnataka are watching this very closely.
It would cement the central government's monopoly on this kind of data collection.
It would. And it could leave states stuck using those old, outdated maps for years to come.
Okay, then there's outcome B. The court sides with Bihar. It upholds the high court's ruling.
That would be a landmark decision. It would empower many more states to go out and collect their own targeted social data.
A massive decentralization of data collection.
An unprecedented one, really. It would allow states to see their own populations with a clarity they've never had before, which in theory should lead to better, more local policy.
But that would be a huge power shift, wouldn't it? Giving states so much more autonomy in their planning.
A monumental shift.
Mm.
But it also raises other questions. I mean, if every state starts collecting data its own way, how do you compare anything across the country? It could create a bit of a chaotic landscape.
That's a good point.
And you get back to that core tension we talked about, the tension between friction and fairness. Does collecting this data just stir up divisions? Or is it the only tool you have to achieve real fairness? The court is basically trying to weigh those two things.
So, when you boil it all down, what does this mean for us? This Bihar case is really about balancing legal tradition, that old 1948 Census Act, with the very real, very urgent needs of today.
It is the need for granular data to tackle deep structural inequality.
And the decision is going to impact millions of people one way or another. It decides how much power states have to truly understand and serve their own people.
And that leaves us with a final thought, something for you to really mull over as we wait for this hearing.
Okay.
Given that the central government made a choice not to release its own 2011 Caste data, they said it was flawed. If a state cannot gather the basic information it needs to understand its own social landscape, to target its own welfare policies, then how can effective, equitable governance ever really be achieved?
That's the paradox, isn't it?
It's the paradox at the very heart of this case. And the answer is going to reshape Indian federalism for a long time to come.